Howdy, folks. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. It's post-election in the U.S., and now I'm not going to go into whether you're happy or sad today, but I'll just say I'm happy. And it's also, and I'll start with this, Russ. I think that I'm not sure if this is your pre-show, but I will start with this. Justice was served yesterday because the cheaters lost. The Houston Astros lose to the Atlanta Braves. And the thing is, I'm not a Braves fan. It was like the war on the Eastern Front. I was forced to root for Stalin over Hitler. Or forced to root for Saddam Hussein over the Iranians, over the Ayatollah. That is like, I didn't like either team, but when it came to, I did not want the Astros to win, and they really came up big yesterday, losing at home 7-0. So,
well, it's funny because I wrote my article for Full Press and said this is how the Braves could win it, but I didn't really pick the winner. And when I was on Sirius to talk about hockey, they blindsided me and said, "Who's going to win the World Series?" And this was like right before I put out the article, or right after, and I said the Braves. And so I was told in my house to drop my 1990s grudge against the Braves on how they used to beat the Mets. I'm having trouble with that. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I did pick them to win. And what I didn't like, and I'm going to give the attention that Joe Buck always wants and doesn't at times deserve, is when you get somebody who's beloved like Freddie Freeman and you're making a home run call, and you decide at that time that it's appropriate to say that could be his last at bat as an Atlanta Brave, you're going to anger a lot of baseball fans and especially Braves fans. And I could see if it was his last at bat in the major leagues. Sure, you definitely say that, and you say, hey, we may never see Freddie Freeman again. That's great. But you're just guessing now because he's a free agent.
Right.
This could be his last at bat. So what is a really happy moment got a lot of people enraged. And Kev, I don't blame him. I think it's inappropriate.
Yeah, I'm with you. 100% with you on that. I just came in ESPN. This is just incredible breaking news.
Go ahead.
Henry Ruggs.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Henry Ruggs III was. They figured out he was doing 156 miles per hour.
Yeah, I mean
that crash.
And
hard to believe.
Russ put it in our direct message group, and I said, he's not going to get charged with vehicular homicide. He's going to get charged with homicide, and he should be. When you're going, if you're driving a Lamborghini, or I don't know what the hell he was driving, but obviously it was a high-end sports car, and you're on a highway in Vegas, and you're going 160, and you kill somebody, and you're drunk out of your mind, you should be prosecuted for murder, because that's just irresponsible. Now, I don't know if they'll do it, but I mean, it's
just sad. It's ridiculous. Yeah. And, I always dislike the way the NFL handles these situations, or the teams do, because, there's always like, hey, we know about it. We're very sad. And then the next day or a few hours later, they just cut the person. And then that's it. It's like, yeah, and it's like, there's never anything about, hey, you know what? We're going to try and prevent this from happening with players in our league. We're going to try and educate more. We're going to try and, have a system where they could call this number and an instant Uber comes. They never have a solution, Kev.
No, I'm with you on that. And, there are teams that are better at it than others. I've talked to, like, for example, in the NHL, a lot of times it depends on who your captain and who your leaders are.
Right.
I've had talked to players who said that one of the captain's job is when you've spent the night out having a good time, you sort out the players who shouldn't go home alone with those, and making sure everybody kind of buddies up. Mm-hmm. And as I was listening to this story, I thought, boy, that's just a very responsible way to make sure everybody gets home, and make sure you don't put two guys who shouldn't be driving together, and that kind of thing. But too often, you're right. And it's one thing. I thought what you just said, Mike, was just so right on, that there are degrees of responsibility, and when you do what this wide receiver did and drive 160 miles per hour, you get no sympathy. A little bit more for the guy who's maybe driving 77 in a 70 zone,
right,
or something of that nature. And
or it's a wet road, or if it was.
Yeah.
This isn't an accident. This is an oops. This is like, okay, you're drunk and you're being completely irresponsible and you're driving like it's the Indy 500. And that at that point, and Esmir brings up the name that I was going to bring up because it's not exclusive to football. Because if you remember Danny Heatley, back in the day, there's been incidents with players in Major League Baseball. I mean, it's a little bit different, but the pitcher for the Yankees, Russ, who was flying a plane and crashed into a building. Corey Lytle.
Yeah.
So I mean, there are degrees of irresponsibility, and in that case, I think Lytle, him and an instructor died, and Danny Heatley killed a teammate. Ruggs here killed an everyday person, I don't know if it was a pedestrian or if it was
no, it was in a car.
It was in a car. So I mean, yes, and his blood alcohol level was twice the legal limit. So I hope,
and it was a rear end situation, so you could let your mind work on that one.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed your career, Henry, because I don't think it's going to happen. Nothing much is going to happen after that.
Yeah, and anybody who's ever driven in Germany knows how this happened on a rear end situation. You're on the Autobahn, and I remember my wife and I were driving, and we were going faster than we would in America, but not 100 miles an hour. I think we were in the 90s. And those cars coming up your backside, they're just a speck, and then they're right on you. And we were in the slope.
I can imagine.
Well, Kev, Russ can attest to this because I've been on the phone with him when I'm driving down the highway and somebody in a motorcycle. And one time it was a car driving into the city of Buffalo from like the airport area. It's a pretty straight shot, a highway going right into the city, and somebody on a motorcycle, and this was like, say, a couple months ago, so August, was literally, I was going 60, had my cruise control on, me being the old man that I am, and this kid in one of these crotch rocket like Yamaha or Honda motorcycles blows by me like I'm standing still and is weaving through traffic. So he's easily going 100, 120, and I'm like, you're going to wrap yourself around a telephone pole and you're going to kill yourself, and you could kill somebody else because they're trying to avoid you. It's the height of irresponsibility. So anyway, it's
like I said, but it shouldn't end here with just hearing about it and then that's it. You should hear from Roger Goodell, and you should hear from the NFLPA, and you should hear that, hey, we could do better here too, because this player is a young player, and we've got to do a better job of educating them and getting a program in place where maybe they can, like I said, they can call and get a car. I'm sure you could hire a company for that, and they'd be happy to do it.
Yeah, I think a lot of teams do actually have that service where they give you a speech beforehand. Look, if you have, if you're in a situation like that, you should always call and order an Uber, and the company will pay for it. They often say so.
Yeah, I mean,
but the problem is when you've been impaired drinking, you don't make wise decisions like that. That's the problem.
No, exactly. Okay, let's start the show. Eck will be joining us.
Just one other quick thing here. Since here, I was just going to bring it up. Another big news day today because Aaron Rodgers has COVID.
And he's unvaccinated.
Pardon me?
He's unvaccinated, apparently, according to a couple reports saying he has COVID, but he is not vaccinated. So he's one of the few in the NFL that are not.
Well, he is going to miss the game against Kansas City. And, it's weird because I was going to talk about the fact that, all of us know who watch television that he has suddenly become a star on television commercials. And I was going to make the comparison to, Peyton Manning in that I think it's softened Rodgers' image. He's quite good and funny in those roles. Probably it's like one of those things. But once Peyton Manning started doing commercials, he became one of the most likable quarterbacks in the game. Yes. people saw him as a better quarterback. Like they really did. He was good, but that doesn't mean people are going to like you. But I think he had the combination when he was on commercials.
No.
Now with this COVID situation, now we hear he's unvaccinated. I think all that goodwill might be eroded.
Here's a question, Kev, because I get the NFL reports. Like I could pop in on their media site, get the reports. But I was at the Flyers game last night. Forget who I was talking to, and I believe the spread was not that much different. I think it was only like Green Bay with like a 2-point advantage or something like that.
No, Green Bay was with 3.5, but now the line will go the other way because
but the idea is even at 3.5, you kind of wonder, did they know something was up? Because as bad as Kansas City's been playing and as good as Green Bay is playing, you wonder why the spread was that low to begin with.
Well, never put it past Vegas to not have inside info that they would know that this.
That's what I wonder, because we talked about it last night. That's not much of a spread considering the way that both the teams were playing, and then this morning you wake up and you hear about Aaron Rodgers, so it does make you wonder.
Well, go ahead.
I was going to just also point. Someone just pointed out that Baker Mayfield's on commercials as well. Now, what bothers me about those commercials is, late in my USA Today career, I did football as well as hockey, and I did Ohio State, and because of because I live in Michigan, and I also did the Cleveland Browns. And I would say that the guy we see in those commercials with Baker Mayfield isn't the same guy I saw when I covered the team.
Right.
He was grumpy. Would be the word that I would describe him. So.
And Kev, the thing is that I don't have a problem with somebody who's established like Brett Favre or Peyton Manning or Aaron Rodgers. They're all Hall of Famers. They're giving Baker Mayfield is just starting out in his career, and he's doing these commercials, and I'm like, where does he get off? It's like, if you want to do a Trevor Lawrence commercial for "Gee, my hair smells terrific" because he's got the long locks, God bless. But Baker Mayfield is the pitch guy is it Progressive, I think. And it's like, God, it's like I'm sick of seeing him, and he's not even that good of a quarterback.
Yeah, but he's pretty good in the commercials. That's
I think he's got a thing to him. I don't even know.
Yeah, and it works. I rarely identify what the actual guy is trying to pitch. Like I couldn't tell you right now what Peyton Manning did. Who that company was.
Nationwide. He's nationwide.
Nationwide. I should, because he's saying the jingle. But anyway, Baker Mayfield, I'm not sure that he is that guy, even though he is quite a likable guy on those commercials. The rummage sale is my favorite, by the way.
Yeah.
When he's going, the guy said, "Are those my pads?" And the guy goes, "They could be."
That was good.
Yeah.
I thought the best one was the new one with Alice Cooper, where he walks to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I don't even know if Alice Cooper's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but he has like these big black spiked boots. He says, "I got this delivery on my doorstep. Is this yours?" And he's like, "It might be." And then it was just clever. But
I know he does a good job on those.
Two quick things.
Go ahead.
Two quick things. Tom Brady is smart that he's playing against. He's not on these commercials trying to be likable. He, like the Subway commercials, he doesn't eat bread, so he doesn't misrepresent that he doesn't eat bread, or they have him like being like really like over the top sort of like I'm like talking like reading a soliloquy, and it's like he knows that he's not liked, so he feeds into that narrative. And Josh Allen, the only commercial he has is Buffalo Wild Wings, and everybody in Buffalo hates Buffalo Wild Wings, so it's almost like an affront to the town that he quarterbacks, that he's representing a place that nobody in Buffalo goes to.
They seem to do pretty well, Mike.
But they don't go. Nobody goes to Buffalo Wild Wings in Buffalo.
Yeah, but I guess it's true. I don't know. You live there, but they do pretty well. I know of them, and I don't live in Buffalo.
No, they do pretty well.
I'm not saying they're not successful. Anyway, let's start the show.
All right, let's move on. Here we go. So good to be back with you guys. Thank you very much. Thanks for everybody out there wondering. My family's doing a lot better. I appreciate that. Everybody's doing well. So for now, I'm here. All right. Okay, let's get the date. It's November, for crying out loud. Hello, Hockey World. It's Wednesday, November 3rd, 2021.
I'm Michael Agello, and go Yankees.
I'm Russ Cohen, and it's been November for a little while now.
I know.
Kevin Allen, Hockey Buzz.
And I'm Eklund. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. I wanted to start today with something before we get into anything else. There's a lot of different little things to talk about for sure, and I have a couple of things from Kevin's article from last week on his 25 thoughts, and a couple of thoughts in there that I wanted to expound upon because I really like that article. But I wanted to start off with, I think, what is kind of monumental and needs to be mentioned, and that's what I wrote about today, and that is Pekka Rinne's number is going to be retired by the Nashville Predators. Which, and I'm taking a little bit of heat because I'm calling him I believe he should be in the Hall of Fame, but I don't think he's going to be in the Hall of Fame, of course, because Mike Richter's not in the Hall of Fame, so I gave up on goalies in the Hall of Fame a long time ago.
Yeah, it's a tough call. Like, there's so many guys.
Cujo.
But when it comes to when it comes to stats and builders and he's almost a builder in a way. He's beyond. When you think about it, here's some couple of crazy Pekka Rinne stats. Okay. In 13 seasons as starter, he won 369 regular season games. Now, the Predators have been around. This is their 23rd season. So that's 45% of the wins in the history of the Nashville Predators that belong to Pekka Rinne. They've been, like I said, in 22 seasons. In the 13 seasons that Rinne was a starter, he went to the playoffs 10 times, which is really remarkable and really something else. The Predators have never gone to the playoffs without Pekka Rinne on their team. Just throw that out there. It's an interesting fact, that they didn't before he got there. They only missed 3 times with him there, and which is why that when you look at the NHL winning percentages in the NHL, Vegas is number one at 630 winning percentage still, which is incredible. But they've only been around a few years. Then when you get into teams that have been around for more than 15 years or whatever, or 20 years, it goes Montreal, Philly, Boston, and Nashville in that order as far as winning percentages go. That has more to do with Pekka Rinne probably than anything else. That Pekka Rinne has in that spot above all those other teams. They've won Nashville in their playoff history has won 54 games. Pekka Rinne has won 45 of them. So the reality is, this is a guy who's not only his number does deserve to be retired. Not only is he great off the ice too, and great in the community and all the things he does, but I think that he deserves a lot more credit and I think a serious consideration for the Hockey Hall of Fame.
Well, Kevin, I'll let you go first. Other than say, then I think Rinne belongs in the Nashville Predators Hall of Fame. I think his number should be retired. Definitely. Do I think he's at the level of being in the Hockey Hall of Fame? No, he's not. Great record with an expansion team. Career .917 save percentage. I think he's a phenomenal goaltender. But there are other goaltenders that didn't win a Stanley Cup that I think are ahead of him, like Curtis Joseph. There are ones that have won Stanley Cups, like Mike Richter, like Tom Barrasso, who I think deserve to be ahead of Rinne. So I think he's deserving of recognition, but I don't think he meets up or matches the level of a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I agree with Mike completely on this. He's getting the acclaim that he should get, which is he's very important to the Nashville Predators, and so his number is being retired. That's completely different than being in the Hall of Fame. I've spent my career trying to explain that to people.
Yeah, I get that.
What that means is you've been very important and very popular within your franchise, and that's the award he deserves. But unfortunately, there in the Hall of Fame, there's always a comparison, and he just doesn't measure up to a lot of the players that are in the Hall of Fame, and some of them who haven't been able to get in the Hall of Fame. So, most of the stuff that you've said is happenstance. He showed up at the right time with the Nashville Predators. That's why he's got a high percentage of their wins. He wasn't there at the very beginning when they were struggling a little bit. And once they started to turn the corner, he was there and then helped them turn that corner. So I think the world of Pekka Rinne, and I think that the intangibles certainly matter, but it's not enough to put him over and put him in the Hall of Fame.
I've got a quick thing to say about him because when we were at that media day when they were in the Stanley Cup, I had never really been around Pekka Rinne enough to sort of ask him a casual question, but I asked him, what was he doing when he got the call about him being drafted? And it was interesting because he really wasn't thinking about it. And it was like either like the midsummer event or one of those big sort of you're out on a town drinking kind of things. And, his agent calls him and just says, hey, you've been drafted. And he was completely taken by surprise and just, got it on the cell phone, hung up. He wasn't at the draft. That's it. And, considering the player he turned into, that's pretty incredible. I found that to be interesting.
He's super mellow. Go ahead, Kev.
Well, I think he's. I hope I'm not wrong on this, but didn't the Predators find him by going to see somebody else?
I think they did.
I think that is the story. Yeah.
And I think they sent. Then had to send someone to watch him, and then you only got to see him in the warm-ups.
Yeah, he
didn't even play.
He was drafted sight unseen.
But that stuff happens all the time, Kev. Like Emil Francis told me.
Less so anymore.
No, but in the old days, Francis was at a game with, and basically he went there to see, and I can't remember the name of the player. He went there to see the player. A Red Wing scout went into the elevator with him and said, "Hey, is so and so playing tonight?" And he goes, "No, he's not." The scout leaves. Francis sees the guy play, has the information. They draft him. That kind of stuff did happen, though, a lot back in the day.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I've actually got a story that's actually pretty good on that. The Red Wings went, and Jim Nill had seen Pavel Datsyuk in the Ural Mountains, and it's a hike to get to the Ural Mountains in Russia where he was playing. And they sent another scout, and they sent in 2 glowing scouting reports, and they said, Kenny, you got to go see this guy. We got to take him, even though he wasn't well known. And so after Neil went, Holland went and saw him, and Datsyuk was terrible. And so he came back and said, Jim, I don't know what you're talking about, but Datsyuk was terrible. And then another scout went and saw him, and he wrote, Kenny, you got to go see this guy. He's unbelievable. And Kenny said, I did see him. He was terrible. And so Kenny again went to the Ural Mountains and, Detroit to Russia to St. Petersburg to wherever, and came back and he said, I have no idea what you're saying. He was terrible. There's no doubt about it. And then when they got to the draft, they begged him to take him. And he said, well, he was terrible every time I saw him, but if you guys say so, I'm going to take him. And of course, we know the history of that decision, but apparently both times.
And obviously that's hilarious. I love that story. I love those kind of stories. They're my favorite things in hockey. They're really what our sport does well. Honestly, those kind of stories. But there's two elements, okay, that I think that are important about with Rinne, and one is, like you look at those other top 5 teams of all time, right? And you ask who their best player has been, who their best goalie's been, and he's been their best player and their best goalie. In franchise, right? He's the first player retired. I think I don't think anybody's playing now. Well, maybe Roman Joki's retired too, but maybe they retire as number 2, but I don't know. The reality is that we all think Henrik Lundqvist is going to go to the Hall of Fame, right? We think that's Hall of Famer? Yeah. Okay. All right. Check this out. Rinne versus Lundqvist, ready? Just going to throw this out there. Both played their first game in the same year. Both have only played for one team. Both were late picks in their draft. Okay. Mm-hmm. Both are in the 200s. Both are 36 years old. Both have one Vezina. Both have one Cup final appearance without winning a Stanley Cup. And the career totals for Hank, his goals against average is 2.37, 919 save percentage. For Rinne, 2.36, 919 save percentage.
No, 2.43.
I got 2.36 on the thing I'm looking at. All right, all right, I'll check that out again. But all right, so 2.43, 919 save percentage. Is that right, Mike?
917.
917. All right, so
369 wins, 230.
Okay, so 2.43, 917 versus 2.37, 919. All right, we'll give you that, whatever. But beyond that, what's the difference between Lundqvist?
I'll tell you the difference. The Game 7 wins that Lundqvist has is an NHL record, and Rinne has never been like that, winning all those Game 7s in a row.
And since the Hockey Hall of Fame and not the NHL Hall of Fame, Henrik Lundqvist won an Olympic gold medal.
Give you that.
And a world championship.
And a world champion.
No question. But better teams, than
and also I would say if you pretty much since Lundqvist has been in the league, he's always been recognized as a top 5 goalie. And
Yes.
Rinne has been there some seasons, but not as consistently as Lundqvist.
And yeah, but then again, one place for New York, one place for Nashville.
Again, Ek, you're putting us in the position of
He's the bad guy.
of ripping the guy that we respect and like.
Listen, when I say that he should be in the Hall of Fame, I'm saying I'm not saying he will be, because like I said, until Richard's in the Hall of Fame, there's no way Rennie's in the Hall of Fame. But in my mind. But if you're gonna compare Lundqvist to Rinne, I'm gonna say I would give Lundqvist in earlier, but not. It's this. The differences are not grand. They're not like this great vast difference. You're talking about wins in Game 7s, Russ. I mean that's
a big deal. What do you mean? It's an NHL record. Nobody's ever done it.
And when you're voting in the Hall of Fame, I've been on those committees.
Yeah, I know.
Like you're splitting hairs like this. Like like everybody who's up is unbelievable. So while you're saying that isn't much,
yeah.
Well,
I get that, but
I ask. Here's what I say from you, Ek.
Yeah.
Give me the record that I just told you that Lundqvist has. That's something close where Rinne has an NHL record that nobody else has.
I would say Rinne has made the playoffs more with a higher percentage than Rennie's made the playoffs with a higher percentage than Lundqvist has.
But it's not an NHL record. I'm asking for an NHL record that no other goalie has ever done in the history of the game.
Well, I agree that that's an incredible record, Russ, and I'm not trying to take anything away from Lundqvist. And
that's all I'm saying.
I'm not trying to put you guys in this position to diss Rinne. I'm just saying that, first of all, the two things that, one that is that Rinne deserves this, obviously these accolades, no questions.
No question.
We all agree that. And two, we all agree that he's not going to go to the Hall of Fame. Okay, but the reality, but I also want to sit there and say that the situation with goalies in the Hall of Fame is ridiculous when it is the most important position in our sport. And the reality is that without Rinne, who knows where the Predators are right now? To be honest, and this is a team that this isn't the New York Rangers. This is the Nashville Predators, and they were almost bought a couple times, almost moved a couple times. Go ahead, Mike.
No, but there are positions in every sport that are sort of ignored. Like in baseball, I know that catchers, second baseman, shortstop, relief
the most
pitchers,
important position in our game.
But it is, and we all believe that. But in the Hall of Fame, look, I just listed 4 or 5 goaltenders I think are Hall of Fame worthy.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm just saying I'm not disagreeing with you that all those goaltenders, maybe we could talk about each of them individually, but I'm not saying that they don't belong there either. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that Rinne makes me really wonder how we do this. Like, because if we're going to do this in a way, where a team like the Predators that comes out of nowhere as an expansion team, completely gets no press for years and years and years.
Well, Kevin,
no one's covering them at all. And Kevin and I think have written more. Kevin, you've probably written more articles on the Predators than anybody in the world. Like, honestly, besides their, national writers, you're definitely leading the way in Predators.
Yeah, I've written a lot about the Predators. Yeah, he's an exceptional goalie, but here's what I would say. Getting in the Hall of Fame is like getting into heaven. There's a long, long line of people in there, and I would just say, Rennie's in that line, but he's well back. So that's the problem. I mean, he has merits to get in there, but probably not enough of them. And Henrik Lundqvist and Richter and guys are in front of him, unfortunately. But it's really difficult to discern the comparisons of players, because they all showed up. Like I give him less credit for being important to the Predators, because he said where would they be? Well, where are the Predators? I mean, they haven't won, they're
they're the fifth most winning percentage team in the last.
But they are, because they haven't been around a long time.
Well, no, they've been around long enough. 23 years, that's a long time.
No, but that's not enough. Not when you're comparing teams that have been around for 100 years.
Granted, but you're comparing teams that with the other with all the teams that you look at, that winning percentage. All original 6 teams are in their own world. I get that, but beyond that, since the original 6, they're number 2. Basically you're behind the Flyers. So the reality is,
Can we? I want to deviate from this because there was some news on the Eichel front yesterday. Emily Kaplan from ESPN reported that it's now down to two teams. One we're not surprised that we talked ad nauseum about them is Vegas. The other one I thought was mildly surprising was the Calgary Flames. And there had been some reporting out there that the deal would encompass Jacob Pelletier, I'm not sure how they pronounce Peltier, Connor Zary, and a package of draft picks. Russ, both are high draft picks. The picks would apparently be conditional.
Right.
I find it hard to believe, though, that if this deal is happening, because I don't think Calgary has the cap room to take a $10 million player on or add $10 million, that somebody like a Noah Hannafin or Sean Monahan wouldn't be involved in this deal. So, I mean, I
agree with that. Somebody with salary has to be involved. These are their two best prospects. Matter of fact, I just spoke to a Calgary scout not long ago and just glowing about Zary, and I'm actually higher on Peltier at the moment, but they're both really good. They do this, yes, they may have a chance at the Stanley Cup, but they are just almost wiping out their entire system. It's not that deep to begin with, and they're basically lopping off their two best guys. So, again, I don't think it's worth the risk for them, because if it doesn't work, which is a better chance that it will work, it will set them back 5 to 7 years. They will.
Well, Kevin,
I agree. I mean, I think that if you're Calgary, why would you do anything right now? Like if you're Calgary, I mean, when you watch that team play right now, they are remarkable. I
can tell you I can tell you why right now, because even if he's playing well, they're not happy with Sean Monahan as a number one center. Now they may think that they have a 1-2 punch if they have Eichel and Monahan, or maybe they trade Monahan as part of the deal. But, I mean, Kev, the one thing that I think – go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I looked at this yesterday, and I couldn't figure out how they were going to do it on two fronts. I can't see giving away your top two prospects, number one.
Yeah.
Like, I see giving up one of those two, for sure. But the other thing is, even one player isn't going to do it. They're only $1 million of cap space, and they don't have anybody on long-term IR. At least I didn't see anyone.
No.
So somehow they've got to find $9 million.
So contracts coming up next year that they've got to figure out.
Unless, and this is the post Nikita Kucherov world. We could say, okay, they make the trade. They're trading for Eichel. Eichel goes on long-term injury. He has the surgery, and he comes back the day after the end of the regular season. So then you don't have the cap ramifications, and you can deal with it in the summer. If that might be the plan. But I mean, do you think Eichel wants to stop? Yeah.
Don't you think there'd have to be an investigation of that, considering he's pretty much told everyone it'll be a 2-month recovery? I just think that's I don't know how they could do that unless they can sell that he had complications in his recovery. But, there is they would have a couple of months to resolve this, because he's going to go immediately on long-term IR, and they would then sort of, they have time to figure it out and maybe move some people and all that kind of stuff. But, we talked about it the other day with Vegas. They could actually make it, do it easier because they've got two guys on long-term IR, and then he'll go on long-term IR. But they don't want to give up Krebs, and Russ doesn't want to give up Krebs either. And
listen, Krebs had a good scoring chance last night. I know he doesn't have any points in 9 games, but it's not all his fault. The other thing is, I'm surprised Andrew Mangiapane. How could Andrew Mangiapane not be in this conversation for the trade?
He's an RFA, which is a tough thing because they're gonna have to up him obviously from what he's making now.
Here's the bigger question here. The bigger question, and this is for us to answer. Who's closer to the cup, Vegas or Calgary?
I think. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Kevin.
I was just going to say, to me, it seems like it's Vegas. I mean, Calgary's been impressive this season, but we weren't even sure they were going to make the playoffs.
Right.
Coming in. So
no,
Well,
it's Vegas if healthy, but like watching that game last night, no disrespect to the Leafs, but you could just see the forward. There was not much defense coming from the forwards on the Knights and Golden Knights. And then the other thing was they were playing kind of fast and loose at times defensively. Like they gave the Leafs top guys a lot of space to operate.
Without Pacioretty, without Stone, without William Karlsson, it was the Henderson Silver Knights, not the Vegas Golden.
Yeah, it really was.
But this time the Leafs actually beat an AHL team instead of losing to one 7-1. But the one thing I draw from this as because I was here in Buffalo after we know Buffalo tanked to get McDavid. And they got finished in 31st place, and they got the best odds, but they lost the lottery and got Eichel. It was a pretty nice consolation prize. But the first couple years, until the Sabres were, clearly just a bad team that wasn't going to compete for anything. Every time they played Edmonton, it was the buildup of, the top to McDavid versus Eichel, like that whole thing. Well, that will come to the forefront. If Eichel is traded to Calgary, then when they play in the playoffs, it's head-to-head Eichel versus McDavid. It will actually be a thing at this point, whereas in Buffalo, it was just a media creation. But it would actually be a thing. I think Eichel, go ahead.
It would be a lot of fun. There's no two ways about that. I mean, I thought about that too. That's the first thing I thought of when I saw it. But I don't know that that this is the way that they want to go. I mean, we've talked about a lot of different. I mean, this would obviously mean I think that Gaudreau's gone, right? Like he's not coming back next year. If they're going to bring him in, that's a move that they have to let Gaudreau go.
And that might be the move that gets them under the cap. If they might trade Gaudreau at the deadline as a rental. And then they would probably have enough room to maneuver to put Eichel in the lineup.
Earlier in the year, and I had heard it as a rumor that Gaudreau was possibly going to be involved in this deal, like that this could possibly be that Gaudreau would possibly go to Buffalo as part of this trade.
And then they would flip him at the deadline because they want young assets. That would make sense.
Yeah, but that's too risky.
It is risky.
It's too risky.
Gaudreau's doing really well right now.
What was that, Kev?
It's too risky. If you can't take an asset back and then think you're going to trade him at the trade deadline, what if he gets hurt?
Right.
True.
Right.
Yeah.
With Terry Pegula, if he really is super involved with this and wants to get the most he can get for Eichel, don't you as a businessman realize if you're really down to two teams, you're not getting close to what this guy's worth unless he's healthy? And don't you just change your mind and say, go ahead, Jack, go get the operation? Because then the market would open up a lot better than what it is now. He's narrowed himself into a corner of just two teams to negotiate with when it would be like 10 teams if he was healthy.
You're talking complete sense, and that means nothing in this scenario because as we've learned, basically the Sabres don't want to let him have this surgery, and it probably is because of an insurance situation. And the last thing that they want is to be on the hook for $50 million if this surgery doesn't work. That's what scares the hell out of them.
I know.
So,
but don't you think the Sabres have created this market because of the four first round equivalents?
Yes.
To me, there'd be more teams in it. Like if you just said I'm going to take the best offer, whatever it is, there'd be more teams in this right now.
Well, Kev, we had Joe Yerdon on the show yesterday, and basically he said that the Sabres are looking at the Eichel deal through the prism of the Ryan O'Reilly deal and the criticism that they faced after making that deal because they gave up a Conn Smythe Trophy winner for basically Tage Thompson and a couple guys who walked away either in free agency or basically retired. And that was the Sabres' own fault and I was here, that was the Sabres' fault because Terry Pegula would not pay the signing bonus on that deal. They probably could have gotten a Robert Thomas or a Jordan Kyrou if he was willing to pay the signing bonus, but he said no, and they got less in the deal, and they got excoriated by the Buffalo media because of it, and it's his own damn fault.
It makes me crazy, though, that they're viewing this based on that. Like this if that is true, if what Joe's saying is true, it is the most crazy backwards way of doing things. Like you cannot base this on the O'Reilly trade had so many different factors. Yes, they didn't get what they should have gotten, but at the time O'Reilly wasn't exactly tearing it up with the Sabres either, if you remember. I mean, he wasn't like
he
was good, but he wasn't like wasn't at Eichel's level or anything like that.
The reason that he was traded was because he wanted out and he mouthed off at and that was. And they said, well, we can't bring him back because he doesn't want to be here. Well, he doesn't want to be here because your organization has been terrible. And, it's like, so, they were operating at a little bit of a disadvantage, but not so much that Ryan O'Reilly's value had been lost. It was the fact that he had an $8 million signing bonus and they didn't want to pay it for a player who didn't want to be there. So they ended up getting Vladimir Sobotka and Tage Thompson. And I can't remember the player, the Swede who, Patrick Berglund.
And then he ended up leaving.
3 years with Buffalo, he scored a total of 60 goals. That's like, and the reality is like, he sort of 65 goals in playing,
Yeah, he's going to
20 games.
He's going to make the Canadian Olympic team. I don't care what he did here. Value.
Now he is.
Yeah, no, but 65 goals is in 3 years.
Good. It's good numbers.
He was a 20 goal scorer each year. He's 20 goal scorer each year. But everybody thinks you're going to get. What do you think you're going to get for a 20 goal scorer? Like the reality is like where are you going to get?
Yeah, but he's not the typical 20 goal scoring center.
Because he's great defensively and the other things he does.
Right, exactly. He's a poor man's Patrice Bergeron, is what he is.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's a little bit revisionist, though. I mean,
okay. He in 3 years he had 60, 55, and 61 points. He scored 20 goals all 3 years. The last year he was minus 23 because the Sabres were brutal, and he said, "Get me the hell out of here," because this organization doesn't know what they want to do. But anyway,
when the player says, "Get me the hell out of here," what do you do? I mean, what do you do?
You get him the hell out of there.
When that happened, I remember being very critical of him when it happened.
They had to trade him at that point. They did.
Well, yeah, but there is ways of dealing with it. I mean, Steve Yzerman, when you tell him that, he says, "I'll get to it."
Yeah,
he did that with Jonathan Drouin, and it worked out. He did it with he was going to do it with Marty St. Louis, but he got a taker. So
and Joe Sakic made his bones on the Matt Duchene deal because he was patient and he said, "I'm not going to trade him until I get what I want for him," and he did get what he wanted for him, and it ended up being Bowen Byram and a package that had to be a benefit for the Avalanche. And I think that's what Kevin Adams, at least the reporting around here is that Kevin Adams, as we all agreed, got his value for Rasmus Ristolainen. So he was emboldened by that, and he said, "Okay, we're going to wait and get what we want for Eichel, and if we don't get what we want, we're going to keep him until we get what we want."
Yeah, but they limited their own market. That's what they did.
All right, look.
And they haven't wavered on that either, from what I've been told. They've been consistent on those 4 first-round equivalents. Yeah.
Now, let's touch on this, but not talk about it too long. But the Kevin Cheveldayoff presser yesterday, Kev, the general consensus was that Cheveldayoff and Mark Chipman definitely benefited from being the day after Bettman and Daly had their media availability because they knew what not to say and knew how to present themselves because they were much more, I think, sympathetic, and they were much and Chipman went down the road of, well, I have sway in this league. I'm part of the executive committee, and I'm going to make sure that this gets done and that gets done. Whereas Bettman and Daly were very loyally, and we don't blame them for being that way, but that's the way that they were.
No, and you're right. That is a perfect assessment. The NHLs were loyally, and yesterday the Jets said some of the things that everyone wished the NHL would have said. Is that fair? I think so. I mean, that's the key to all this. And Russ has talked about this before. There's so much momentum now that we have on the failings, and that people are saying now the right things about what's going to be done. Well, but the momentum will be gone in 2 weeks, and now it's going to be left up to the teams. And I keep, reminding people of this. They said in the report the Blackhawks had rules in place that demanded they take care of this immediately, and they simply didn't follow them. So now it's incumbent upon all the teams to put someone in charge of making sure those rules are followed.
Right.
Because their inputs. It's one thing to say.
The other thing is too, Kev. It's it's nice to say in a press conference what everybody wants to hear, even if it's sincere. But again, if you don't outline a plan and say, this is actually what we're doing right now, and you'll see the change in a couple of months, it just goes in the ether too.
Well,
so it's hard to take it seriously.
I agree with that, but I also think you got to have someone in charge of it. As again,
Yes.
Pointing out what the report said. They had a rule in place that said that in all situations like this, you must act immediately. And McDonough ignored it. He was the president of the team. So,
yeah, and the other ramifications that now the NHLPA met the representatives of the NHLPA of the 32 teams I think they had a conference call a couple days ago regarding one of the things was the future of Donald Fehr, and nothing has come out about that. But there have been statements from some players. I know Robin Leonard made a statement after the game last night in Toronto. Wayne Simmons yesterday said, has his faith been shaken in the NHLPA after the beach situation? He says, quite frankly, yes, it has. So, I mean, there's another shoe to drop there, Kevin, where, Donald Fehr has done his job in terms of negotiating CBAs, but, maybe there's a feeling that it might be time for him to go after this situation.
Yeah, I guess it's possible. I wouldn't want to predict either way. With the players, you never quite know, what they're going to do. I think they're a little more unpredictable.
Right.
But clearly, there was a failure on their part to recognize the problem, and I don't like it that some people are saying, "Well, he really wasn't an NHL Players Association member," and but he was on the team, was part of it all, and they should make it not. It's their moral obligation to take care of players, regardless if on a technicality the guy's not officially a member. But
The other thing with Donald Fehr, sorry, Kev, is that he did voluntarily say they'll have an outside independent company go ahead and look at all this. So he did say that.
Yeah, but the Blackhawks did all that, and all I saw after all this was done was, but the Blackhawks hired it. So what are we going to say? Is Donald Fehr, going to pick the independent? I actually think that they did get an independent group in Chicago. I think that group did a good job pointing out all the failings of the Blackhawks. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure whoever Fehr will pick will also do a good job pointing out all their failings. But the problem I have with the PA is they actually have something in place to deal with this. Right. And yet they didn't seem to be on top of it. And they clearly knew about it.
And we also have to remember this. There's a couple of other situations that haven't been resolved. Some of it played out on Twitter too. So it's like, this isn't over by a long shot. Even if we don't hear about Kyle Beach again until whatever happens with the lawsuit, there's other things at play here with other players now.
Yeah.
And people.
Just touching on, not specific games, but last night, unusual 4 shutouts in the league. Jack Campbell shuts out Vegas or Henderson. Jake Allen shuts out the Red Wings 3-0. Russ, you were at the game against the Coyotes, at Carter Hart with the shutout, and also John Gibson shuts out the Devils. Just wanted to ask you about the Coyotes. They're now 0-9-1. They're clearly the worst team in the league, not just based on the record, but by the lineup that they're putting out. And then they get another bad news this morning. Connor Timmins, one of their young defensemen who they got for Darcy Kemper from Colorado in the trade, he's out the rest of the year with a knee injury. So it's just going from bad to worse with that team.
Here's my assessment. The goaltending was actually pretty good. This game was close for a while. This was scoreless after 2, and even 2-0 for a while until the empty netter. Arizona played a good road game, and the Flyers were kind of taken aback speed-wise and otherwise. The issue is, again, they had Barrett Hayton back on the first line, and I saw him trying really hard. Like he had one good deflection chance that hit the post on Carter Hart. But other than that, him on the top line with him in the middle against like Couturier or whoever they lined up against him, it's not going to be favorable. And they did have trouble with puck possession. And so, that was a thing. Beyond that top line, I saw almost no production out of the rest of their team. If you'd have told me Phil Kessel played last night, I'd be like, where? How? I didn't even see Phil Kessel. I didn't even notice him. Like it was just I noticed their first line. Keller had a breakaway that Carter Hart stopped, but Arizona is just they could play
by the situation with the Coyotes. I've always sort of been waiting for and hoping for that the Coyotes could prove that they belong in the NHL, but they never seem to quite get good enough to, like Carolina had that, winning the cup and everything, and everyone got excited. And we know if they play well, that team does well there. We know that. We just don't know with Arizona, not where they're located now. Well, what I'm bothered by is when all these other teams have stripped down to the chassis, you knew it was coming and it was worthwhile. Toronto, Buffalo. Arizona was a competitive team when they started this process.
Right.
They were a competitive team. Rick Tocchet had made them better defensively, and they were a contending playoff team. And now, they're I don't know what they are, to be honest.
Yeah. No, I don't. They have a collection of veterans that they've taken on that were dumped from other teams. They've traded their best players, in Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Connor Garland. I mean, they were a reasonably successful team with Rick Tocchet as their head coach. And I'm not casting aspersions on Andre Tournier because he doesn't have a lot to work with. So
look, Soderstrom, aside from a bad penalty, I was watching him. He is developing, and they have him on the third pairing. They're doing the right thing with him. So that's a good young defenseman that eventually can be very good for them. But there's a lot in the middle that's, just not doing anything. The Christian Fishers and all those guys they've been sort of carrying for the last 2-3 years just can't produce and aren't doing much in a game. They could all play like tight hockey, Mike. But in the end, all the Flyers had to do was have one good shift, and Couturier saw that he had like Andrew Ladd to beat. And Konechny had the puck and he threw it because he knew Couturier would outskate Ladd. He did. He went right to the net and he gets a goal. He shoots a wrist shot and he gets a goal. And it's like that is what happens when you have guys. Andrew Ladd and Louis Eriksson are horrible. I feel bad because they were once good players and they're literally playing out the string like like Joe Namath in LA. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, and go ahead, Kev.
Well, I was just going to add in something to the goalie situation too. I've been following, the league averages for a long time, the way things are, and as we all know, save percentage has been on the decline for 5 consecutive seasons.
Right.
And this year it's not. It went from 9.14 down to 9 last season, and I looked this morning and it was at 9.14. Now this is small sample size. We're only at 10-11% of the season, something like that.
Yeah, 10.
But what do we make of that? I don't have any theories for why all of a sudden.
I don't have a theory, but I can tell you that Arizona was the worst going into that game. They were like 898.
Yeah.
So, but I don't have a theory. I wish I did. I really don't.
Well, I can only say from the games that I watch, and obviously I concentrate on the Leafs. They haven't really gotten on track offensively until the last 2 games. They were scoring on average 2 goals a game. And the scores have been down. I think usually, and this is the weird thing, usually the first 10 games, the first month of the season, the offense is out of bounds. It's just it's uncontrollable. And that's why, the Leafs are always leading the league after October because they're scoring 4.5 goals per game. And now I think teams, they came into the season playing a more established defensive style, and I think it's sort of like you started in the middle of the season.
I also think it's the difference of all of a sudden it's an 82-game season again.
I'm not sure what that noise is, but
this is like the
that's just construction here at my.
Oh, okay.
But anyhow. It's now an 82-game season, and teams are now traveling again. And so I think that they're traveling more than they did last year. And I think there is an effect. They're not used to it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll end the show here. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast for the departed Eklund, For Kevin Allen, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just